Dijon, the proud little capital of Burgundy, 1455. In a barber's shop thick with tallow smoke and warm soap, a knot of travellers sit talking. And the barber, stropping his razor, slowly realizes he cannot understand a single word. Not Latin, not Flemish, a language built, on purpose, to keep men like him outside it. This is the story of the secret tongues and hidden signs of the medieval underworld. And I'll tell you now, before anything else, that by the end you'll find you still speak a little of it yourself. The barber carried what he'd overheard to the town's prosecutor, a meticulous lawyer named Jean Rabustel, and what followed is one of my favorite documents of the entire Middle Ages. Rabustel opened an inquiry, filled it with names, and did something almost no lawman had done before. He wrote out a dictionary of the suspect's language, word by word, by candlelight. The file still survives, and its strangest page is a word list. The men called themselves Coquillards, companions of the shell, after the scallop badge worn by pilgrims to Compostela. Holy costume, unholy trade. The roads had made them. 2 years earlier, the long war between England and France had finally sputtered out, and thousands of soldiers were paid off into a countryside that had no work for them. Some walked home. Some just kept walking. The Coquillards were the sharpest edge of that drift. Lock-pickers, dice-loaders, sellers of chains that shone like gold and were not. Men who could empty a purse in the time it took to bless you. I honestly don't know what I would have done in that world with an empty road ahead of me and a soldier's habits behind. One man who spoke their tongue could also do something none of them could. His name was François Villon, say it Villon, a master of arts from Paris, a thief by night, and very possibly the finest poet France has ever produced. He ran with an associate of the Coquillards, a lockpicker called Colin de Caillou, and he left behind several ballads written entirely in the gang's jargon, poetry composed in a language the authorities were still struggling to crack. The same pen gave French its most famous sigh, "Where are the snows of yesteryear?" In 1462, the courts of Paris finally condemned him to their harshest sentence, and at the very last hour, it was softened to 10 years of banishment. On a January morning in 1463, Villon walks out of the city gates into the snow and out of recorded history. No grave, no letter, no further line of verse. I find that vanishing harder to accept than any ending a court could have written for him. And I do owe you my honest verdict on the barber who started all this. To me, he did the right thing. Those were dangerous men, and somebody's purse, or something far worse, was always next on the list. If you're with me and the barber, tap the like and stand him a drink. If you believe there's a specially drafty corner of history reserved for informers, put his trial in the comments. I'll read the case against him. The Coquillards were not the invention of one unlucky town. They were a symptom, and the sickness was already a century old. After the Great Plague swept Europe in 1348, frightened rulers clamped down on the poor who moved. England's labour laws made idle wandering an offence, and even forbade giving alms to able-bodied beggars. Movement itself became suspicious. Towns started licensing their approved poor, issuing badges for them to wear. The state, quite literally, pinning signs onto people. The road answered with signs of its own. German-speaking lands had a name for that answer. Rotwelsch, roughly beggar's gibberish, a secret tongue on record as early as the mid-1200s. It folded borrowed words from Yiddish and Romani into German until an eavesdropper was left holding nothing. Around the 1440s, the city clerks of Basel sat down and catalogued the tricks of the wandering poor like naturalists describing new beetles. And around 1510, somebody gathered the whole tradition into one slim, astonishing book. The Liber Vagatorum, the Book of Vagabonds, sorted the underworld into 28 distinct orders of false beggar, sham pilgrims, pretend clerics, men who faked the falling sickness in the market square, each with its own methods and vocabulary. It became a bestseller, and in 1528 it acquired the most unlikely editor imaginable, Martin Luther, who wrote a preface confessing that he himself had been cheated by exactly these wanderers more often than he cared to admit. Sit with that for a second. The man who stood his ground against an emperor, outplayed by a beggar with a script. Somewhere in those 28 orders is the con that fooled Martin Luther, and he never said which one it was. I have my suspect, the sham pilgrim, because piety was the one door Luther never locked. Pick yours, make your case for it underneath, and I'd genuinely like to see who gets convicted. Words were only half the toolkit. The other half was never spoken at all. Across those same lands, travellers left small scratches and chalk marks on gateposts and door frames, signs later Germans called Zinken, and while nobody can date the first one, by the time anyone recorded them properly, they were already old. One mark meant a generous kitchen. Another warned of a fierce dog. Another that the householder would fetch the law. Another said simply, "Worked already, move along." A newspaper for people who officially did not exist. I still find that quietly brilliant. England had its own version, and its own name for the outlaw's tongue, Pedlar's French. Poets had been grumbling since the 1370s about sturdy beggars faking their ailments, but the man who truly cracked the code arrived 2 centuries later, a Kent magistrate named Thomas Harman. Through the 1560s, he stood at his own gate, offering wandering rogues dinner, small coins and patience, and quietly wrote down everything they let slip. Harman claimed he did it to protect honest householders. I half believe him. The other half of me notices how much fun he was clearly having. His little book reads like a field guide to a hidden species. Upright men, the commanders of the road, taking a cut of every beggar's day. Priggers of prancers, horse thieves, and I refuse to apologize for how much I enjoy saying that. Abraham men who performed madness for pennies.
Hey nonny nonny, the wheel goes round, a penny for a dance and a pint for a pound. Sing high, sing low, the moon is made of cheese, all for the love of the summer breeze.
Later cant hunters even recorded the initiation. A new rogue was stalled to the order by having a full quart of ale poured over his head. The only baptism I know of where the congregation resents the waste. Harman's masterpiece, though, was a man called Nicholas Jennings. Jennings worked London as a counterfeit crank, frothing at the mouth with slivers of soap, artfully filthy, trembling at church doors. Harman grew suspicious and set a boy to follow him. By nightfall, the boy is watching a quiet miracle. The shaking wreck straightens up, washes, and strolls home a well-dressed citizen. In one day at the grates, Jennings had gathered over 13 shillings, about a month of an honest labourer's wages, collected between breakfast and dark. He ended in the pillory, and Harman printed his portrait twice on the same page, beggar beside gentleman, the first before and after in the history of crime. I've shown that double page to a seminar room and watched it fall silent. Here is where you come in. When cant words leaked into ordinary English, some of them never left. Bouse was the canting term for drink, and a bousing ken an alehouse. Say the word booze tonight, and 5 centuries of the road are on your lips. Filch was theirs as well. Even the word cant comes from the Latin cantare, to sing, the pleading, sing-song whine of the professional beggar at the gate. You have been speaking the secret language all along. The tongues outlived the world that made them. Cant flowed on into the slang of Dickens' London, and Rotwelsch was still being whispered in corners of Germany within living memory. And that, to me, is the real lesson scratched into all these signs. A secret language is a map of fear. Read the old word lists, and you can see exactly what the poorest people of the Middle Ages needed to hide from. Hunger, cold, closed doors, fierce dogs, and above all, the law. This is history recreated, and it's mine. If you'd like to keep walking through history with me, sideways, through barbershops and gateposts, subscribe and chalk me one comment on your way out. The one secret sign you'd have scratched beside your own front door. Because the Coquillards, the crank and the poet all wanted the same impossible thing. Words that would vanish without a trace. And the trace is on your tongue.
It was a fine sight. I have not seen the like.
And did he truly walk all that way?
Every step, so they say. Well, the young have a strength of their own.